It's the choices of stepping into the version of yourself that you want to, not the self that you know. And you might not see that self yet. It's possible. Raising your standard, committing to yourself, doing the work, excavating the parts of ourselves. Be really kind and compassionate, like writing to yourself. Treat yourself as if you would treat the person you love most and you would want to treat, like how to treat them.
I love the your well, one. You've just got such an amazing mindset and perspective on life, and you've clearly done the work to kind of establish and rank and order these things to know what does matter, and you've got kind of like a order of merit list in terms of like what ends up at the top and what ends up at the bottom, and for me, relationships is so important. I for two reasons. One, as we've all heard, you are the sum of the five people you spend the most time with. I think who you surround yourself with is largely just like your habits determines what is it that you're going to be able to give to the world. You know, what are
Mm-hmm.
going to be your contributions, and you can really kind of look around the room, you know, the figurative room, and decide how that's going to be based on who you spend the time with. And so tell me a little bit more. I love your practice of gratitude. I think so many people have, you know, frustrating lives because they don't have the vision to have, like what you talked about, the appreciation and gratitude for what is there. Are there, you know, that's one amazing habit or practice with your relationships. Are there other things that you do, and maybe not with your romantic partner, but like in your friendships or your co-working
Yeah.
relationships?
If I can share this one, this is a recent new one for me. In my morning writing, um, I historically have recognized with myself a really tough inner critic. I high standards, you know, for myself, for my business, for my team, and that has a lot of pluses and it also has some challenges. And a recent exercise that I began doing to really honor the parts of myself that I don't believe I was acknowledging or giving enough credit, and really just that inner work was I spend time in the morning reflecting on this, what I call like a self appreciation exercise. And it's not about being selfish. It's about recognizing the little and big things within yourself of how you're showing up in the world and who you're choosing to be. So, example, this morning as I'm writing, yes, you can go gratitude, and I did that as well. And I think it's important to circulate the mind to what you appreciate. Again, what you focus on is what you get more of. The self appreciation exercise, taking time to work on that inner relationship with ourselves. I think we all can, if we're honest, that can be an area of challenge. And I don't know people's experiences with that. So if this is helpful, I mean, I'm more than happy to kind of be vulnerable and share here. So writing, um, what I appreciate about myself of how I showed up. And, you know, in the beginning that I found that to be really challenging. And that was surprising for me. So then again, starting with like maybe the things of yesterday. So I had to make a tough call yesterday. And when I reflect on that call, it really humbled me and it really made me appreciate life more. And what I could reflect on is you know, again, I go to the heart. I really appreciate taking the time to prioritize the time with this individual, give them the space to be heard, to know that this is not a gym call. This is a call that I realize you're going through some really challenging things right now. And I also just want to let you know that I care about you. I want to give you the space to just voice anything you need to, and let you know that you're not alone. So um, it was taking time this morning to honor the part of myself that chose to do that. And when I believe in writing the self appreciation practice, you begin to recognize these parts of yourself that maybe again I easily was glossing over. I would look at a week and not realize the immense things that how I was choosing to show up or just choose to be in the world. And I think that's a really important thing that, if added, can be really helpful to improve your relationship with yourself, because that's the first and most important relationship is how am I relating to myself. Then when I go out into the space with other people, I'm really working hard at being a better listener in relationships with people. In the coach, business owner world, it's a lot of problem solving and it's a lot of helping people. And early on in my relationship with my intimate partner, I realized that mentality, while it serves you really well in my line of work, my partner doesn't always want to be solved. She wants to be heard. She wants to be understood. So as I've evolved and worked on self, and learned from classic mistake making, it's giving a lot of people the space to be heard, because I have this belief that people, we as people, truly want to be seen, heard, felt, and understood. And if you want advice, getting better at saying, "Hey, Athan, um, are you looking for me to listen and be ears and support you in what you're sharing, or are you looking for advice?" And that gives you the ability to kind of guide me, like, man, I just need to explain this situation, and then I know to just literally hold space for you. Where I think when I've been a part of conversations, a lot of mistakes I've made and I see is it becomes tennis. It becomes like I share with you something really heartfelt, on my mind, and I don't want to be told what to do. And we as humans, it's out of a loving place, but we miss the mark by being like, "Oh, you should blah 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 blah," and that's not necessarily, as a human, what I'm looking for in the moment. I'm just looking to know that yes, this is hard, or yes, you understand, or yes, you relate. So it speaks more to the self work. And maybe someone, I could imagine someone listening to this and being like, wow, like, if that would be a place where I'd want to get to. I only got here by making all the mistakes along the way and realizing that's not the way that I want to choose to continue to be out in the world. So if someone were to relate with that, or yourself, or anybody, it's a process. It's a constant process of improving and reflecting. And so that's what jumped out to me right away.
I absolutely love what you said about the starting with the self, practicing these with yourself, because I think so often the interactions we have with others, and like the Four Agreements. If anyone's read the book, The Four Agreements, one of them is never take anything personally. It's never personal because we're always all mostly just kind of dealing with ourselves, and that is like emitted into the world in our relationships and everything else. And so I think one of the best practices anyone could have is, we oftentimes look to others for coaching, leadership, guidance, wisdom, but we already have so much of that within ourselves but we
Mm-hmm.
just don't see it. We just don't value ourselves enough to be our own coach. And so, like you, I have a daily practice, a journaling
Mm.
practice, and that a large part of I call it my self best friend, or my self coaching practice, where
Mm.
every single day, I'll quickly summarize my journaling practice. At the top of the page, two things that I need to get done that day. Something that I'm going to consider this day a win if I get these two things done. Then I do a brain dump. Literally every thought that comes to my mind, anything that's been racing, tumbling, swirling, I literally just dump it on a piece of paper so that I can kind of see it. And it's a part of conscious, like bringing the unconscious to the conscious.
Mm-hmm.
For me. So I do a couple-minute brain dump, just literally no filter. If the word laundry comes to mind, I write laundry. If the word what the hell comes to mind, I write what the hell. And after that, I write a best friend slash coaching letter to myself every single day. It starts with Dear Athan, and I write a letter to myself as if I were my own best friend or my own coach, that whatever I
Mm-hmm.
think I need to hear that day, whatever it is I've been dealing with, whatever I'm worried about, I give myself my own kind of like pep talk, coaching talk. If I have to be brutally honest, like, hey man, this is where you're messing up and this is something you need to work on. I do that for myself, and I always sign it, I love you, Athan, and
Mm.
that daily practice for me just keeps me grounded. And it really, like I said, it's somewhat selfish, but also it helps me to show up in the world as my best self.
Well, one, thank you for sharing that. Love, I love that, and will of course adopt and model uh, that I don't think that's selfish at all, Ethan. I think what you're doing there, if we zoom out, the brain, like, I'm sure, have you heard this? The only things you can control, and one of them is your thoughts. Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
I think about that and I say, I don't think you can control your thoughts. I think we get impulse thoughts. I think we have a better control over how we can react to those thoughts. So I think that's the missing link. I think a thought can come, and again, it could be a shameful thought. It could be something I've done in the past, or when I see someone. It could be a thought of judgment, and I want to move more into acceptance and a million other things. And I don't know if we as humans have a control to that degree, but I think what we can get a greater handle on is our response when those things come up, not make it an emotional thing, learn how to navigate that. And when you shared what you're doing in the journaling of intentions for the day, which I love, I would even, I forgot to add this. So pinning to yours, like accomplish, um, one of the things I write in mine too that I forgot to mention is um, declaring who I'm gonna be that day. And I
Mm.
usually go to my weaknesses. So like if say one of my weaknesses is I'm working on being more patient. Today I will be patient. I will be patience. And then I reflect the next day. So I love the accomplishment. And then I love the brain dump because man, we take in a lot. We take in a lot in a day, in a week. And where does that stuff go if we're not outwardly expressing it, or we need our own private space with it. So I love the release of that, get it out of your head. And then I love the idea of communicating to self from self. I've done an exercise like that one time where I wrote a letter to my younger self, like
Yes.
my a part of my younger self that was maybe had gone through something challenging from my adult self, and then I did the inverse, the younger self to the adult self. I love the concept of self best friend. And again, I think working through the notion that um, I think that's one of the highest things you can do, because from that, as you heal, improve, reflect, grow, insert all the things that come from that, you're a better father, you're a better leader, you're a better friend, you're a better partner, you're a better podcast host, you're a better gym owner, you can be more and give more. And from that version of yourself, your life is more fulfilling, your impact is greater, and that's amazing. So man, cool practice. How long have you been doing that?
I adopted it probably about 4 or 5 years ago. So I've
Very
got
cool.
stacks of journals of letters to myself, and it's evolved over time. And but yeah, it's like one of those non-negotiable daily habits for me. I have just a few, right? Like when I say like non-negotiable, that means under no circumstances am I going to negotiate with the weaker side of myself to not do this. And
Yeah.
that's become one of those things. Like I just um, you know, it's just like now I don't know. I prefer to do it in the morning, but I'm not always able to do it in the morning. But no matter
Hmm.
what, before I go to bed, I'm going to do this practice, and it's really been so healing and powerful for me. I had some thoughts. So one of the things you said is like someone said one of the things we can control is our thoughts, and I couldn't actually disagree more with that statement. I
Hmm.
think that the brain is all your brain is a computer, right? And it runs programs in the background, and it's also a perceptor, right? Everything in the environment, everything that's going on, it's kind of just like taking in and processing, just like a computer would. And you really don't have any control of that, just like you don't really have control of your heart beating or your lungs breathing. It's one of those kind of like involuntary things. And I think the mistake so many people have is that computers running programs based on, like, it could be literally a song it heard, a TV show it watched. It's just taking in information and then running shit in your
Hmm.
brain.
Yeah.
And so many people think that they are their thoughts. They
Yes.
think they are their brain. And
Hmm.
it's a major mistake. You are not your brain. You are not your thoughts. You are the person. You are the whatever it is, the being behind the computer, sitting at the desk, and you can. They can run their programs, but you can choose what of those thoughts you believe. And I think that that's where a lot of people don't do, that's the work that so many people don't do, because if someone told you as a child, most of the time how we think about ourselves and our character and our personality is largely developed like before the age of 7. And so some people will say 13, but before the age of 7. Someone said to you, you had some experience that you understood with your limited child brain
Mm-hmm.
that started to drive how you think, how that computer's programs were written. And if you make the mistake of believing that that is truth, that that is who you are, you're missing so much of the beauty of life and all the opportunities and all the possibility that's out there.
For sure. You're speaking such beauty and truth that I would imagine for some people is hard to really, um, or could be hard, I should say, to come into its entry with, and it even extends into how, when you were sharing there and I was listening, how many times have you heard somebody say something like this goes into communication? Oh, I'm so lazy, or I'm so bored. And it's interesting because the labels we place become almost an association of an identity, whereas a better representation, sorry if you hear my chickens, a better representation would be, uh, I'm feeling lazy at this moment, because it's a feeling, it's a sensation. And going back to the being writing, the being, you can be anything. I'm not a fixed thing. I can be anything I choose to be. And a past self who maybe was so uh, impatient can learn to become patient. And that's part of the work we're talking about, is choosing a higher version of yourself, elevating your standard. And what is that commitment level going to look like? And when you start to see the pluses of life, the joys, the all of it, it's such a better side than the other side.
Yeah, I think one truth that I know is true is that, like, one thing you said is you can be anything. You can evolve and you can change, and sometimes you can do it in very short order.
Mm-hmm.
It's a choice of doing and being a different way. And the real challenge with that is another thing that you mentioned is your identity, right? Like we have all created this identity of who we think we are. And the
Mm-hmm.
problem, again, you can change who you are, but the problem is how you created your surroundings and everything that's around you, your environment wants to keep you in the identity that you've kind of like created as a standard. And it's hard sometimes to break out of the relationships, the job, the community, the addictions, like whatever they are. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a real challenge for people. And it seems like you've kept growing and pivoting and expanding over time. Do you have any thoughts on how you can change your identity and your surroundings and your environment to be who you want to be?
What jumps out right away is, when you ask that, there was a part of my experience that I came across when you talk about identity and being. I came across some work where it was identifying the way you are being and almost excavating the underlying beliefs and thoughts that are kind of going into those, of how you're choosing to show up, whether it's um, a scarcity around money, whether it's your views on a relationship, or how a partner may not show up, or just your past experiences. And you have to, I shouldn't say you have to, in my experience, excavating the thoughts that kind of go into the identity helps create understanding. So,
Yeah.
okay, now is that the belief, thought, experience that I want to keep and create moving forward? And I know that is not easy. I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's vulnerable. I know a lot of folks, myself included, it can be a scary arena to go into, and to start to confront those things. I think when stuff comes up, I read a great quote: what gets stored as pain comes up with pain. So what we block off and kind of like suppress down, when we go to do that work, it comes back up the same way that we stored it. And I think that's the way through. Now, if you need help or assistance, I think enlisting in the appropriate people who can be guides. No one's going to do the work for us. They can help us navigate and guide and support and ask different questions. My work with my coach, if I learned anything from her, it's like you said, it's all inside me. And to ask a more empowering question, we can get stifled in asking disempowering questions. Why me? Why does this keep happening to me? Well, if that's the question, you're going to keep looking for answers to fulfill that. So um, roots back down to making a choice, and the choice to commit to yourself. If I spin this to when I coach people in nutrition, I before we even begin, I say, hey, I'm 100% fully committed to being your guide and helping you get from A to B and improving your life, and teaching you and being in your corner 100%. What this really represents to me is you, before we move forward, and we don't have to, if you can't do this, you have to commit to yourself. I can't
Yes.
do it for you. I can provide and the context, the information, but then there's going to be like we're going to meet, an hour or 30 minutes, and then you're going to be away from me the remaining part of the month. And it's the choices of stepping into the version of yourself that you want to, not the self that you know. And you might not see that self yet. It's possible. So these words come out to me in terms of like raising your standard, committing to yourself, doing the work, excavating the parts of ourselves, and being really, this is something again I have worked on, is being really kind and compassionate in that process to
Yes.
yourself. I
Yes.
don't want to be so brutal and mean and harsh, and I was for a large time to myself, and it was a tough place to be and live. And if I could offer that thought to people, is when you begin to, or if you're on that journey of working on yourself where you begin that, be really kind and compassionate. Like you had wrote of like writing to yourself. Treat yourself as if you would treat the person you love most, and you would want to treat, like how to treat them. And if you don't know, it's like then it's a skill to build and to lean into, because that's so important. How we relate to ourselves is how we're going to relate out to the world.
Absolutely. One thought on what you just said, it would just be so amazing if someone could just swoop in and just save us and do everything for us, and it would just make life so easy. But obviously that'd be unfulfilling and that would never work out. um, but what I love that you just said is about the kindness piece. In fact, my fifth value is kindness over everything.
Yeah.
And and people, I think, often misunderstand kindness. There could be, if you have people pleasing behaviors, like I always call myself a recovering people pleaser.
Mm.
That kindness could look really ugly, actually, if it's inauthentic, right? If it's not coming from the right place, it looks passive aggressive, it looks placating, it looks manipulating, right? But I believe that
Mhm.
true kindness is the golden rule: treat others as you would want to be treated. And sometimes kindness is a little hard. Like, I think through my military experience, being a ranger, some of the most kind acts that anyone ever did for me was to hold up a mirror and be like, look, you're being a piece of shit. Like, this is how you're acting right now. And in the moment, it hurt and it stung. But I look back on it now as one of the kindest acts that anyone could have done for me, as being like having the amount of love to say the hard thing, to say the
Yeah.
truth, to say the truth,
A
you
hundred
know?
percent. 100%. Two spin-off thoughts. One is you can't go wrong if you have a pure intention. So whoever said that to you, if I were to say that to you, if you were off course as a dear friend, and maybe it's real raw, it's uncomfortable to receive that. But if I know that pure intention, like I don't have to worry about the response, because I know as a brother to brother, as a friend, as someone who loves you and cares about you, the intention is not to harm you. It's not to hurt your feelings. It's not to create ill or send you on a downward spiral. It is a reality check. Um, that was just a choice of how it was said to you, right? So that's one example of many. I'm not saying that's the way that we should check people. So intention, I give myself the permission of Um, not other people's response to my intention is not my responsibility. If my intention is pure, if I know it and it's authentic, like we talked about, which that is the ultimate goal, is like you're operating from an integrity driven place when you go out and operate, and your intention, maybe my delivery was poor, but my intention was purposeful, was meaningful. Okay, I can work to improve my delivery, but I know my intention was pure there. um so I think that's such an important thing to kind of add to what you just shared.